andisi nabo busisi nabo sindisi ayisonsisisa amalanga amaningi ayisoyithakazeke nabo zandile nabo zanele nabo zodwa nokudoda indwangu bala asabala awusoyikalaga hekithi soyikataga amazethi hekithi soyikalaga hekithi soyikataga amazethi hekithi soyikalaga hekithi soyikataga amazethi hekithi soyikalaga hekithi soyikataga amazethi hekithi Baba, ululu, wete, ay, show me happy later. Nageta ufele hater, makuzumela lebangweta. Otomorobisa leteka, askis negli busy, libozizi, gama fifi, ay, giga, sipaniki, maswita, rataspili, ay, show me happy later. Nageta ufele hater, ay, show me happy later. Nageta ufele hater, ay.
Sorry.
Hey.
Kunamaphoyisa ngaphandle bathi kunemoto eshayo.
Bathini bo?
Yasho imoto.
Esikalaga ayinde sikalaga anti. Masifika sicala ubumnandi. Masithetha sama nozandi. Asuka esikalaga ayinde sikalaga anti. Asuka masifika sicala ubumnandi. Masithetha sama nozandi. Gogo phezu kwenduku. Asilalisa mbesuku. Samba sonke nabotutu sikata kwamazethi gogogo ayiphezu kwenduku asilalisa
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this session on the textile initiative. As this sector, the textile sector, is already a priority at the international level, as a group of governments have recognized alongside UNEP 6 the urgent need for a coordination mechanism to build coherence in the policy response to address the adverse effects of the textile value chain on nature, people, and economics. And I will repeat that, the importance of aligning the impacts on nature, people, and economics, as it's all very much interrelated, and we don't want to see a negative effect in one and creating a positive effect on the other one. So responding to this, UNEP is facilitating the global textile policy dialogues, and this event is forming part of these dialogues. We hope that this event will also be connected to several others that will start happening during the year in most of the critical and really important events that we'll have during 2026. So we will now have two sessions. The first session will be a ministerial dialogue, and then that will be continued by a technical panel. But before we move into the ministerial dialogue, I want to invite our opening remarks by Lydia Noronha, the UN Assistant Secretary General and head of the New York office of the United Nations Environment Program. Lydia, please join us and take the floor. Thank you.
I speak to this, right? Oops. No, it doesn't fit there. So, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm standing in for Inga because she couldn't be here. I don't know if this is on. Is it on? Okay. So, first of all, welcome on behalf of UNEP. It's really nice to see you. I was told to tell you that this textile I'm wearing looks pretty, it doesn't have chemicals, so do not worry unless I find some chemicals in it, but I hope not. But anyway, very welcome. This is a very important dialogue we're having, and we're really excited about it. I want to acknowledge and thank the financial support of the European Union and of the German government, the BMZ and the GIZ, for your support to this. So, welcome. So, collaboration and dialogue is absolutely at the heart of what UNEP is doing in everything, but especially in the textile work. And I really want to focus on the collaboration and on the dialogue part, because that is what is going to make this work. We know that the textile sector cannot continue in this business as usual. It's a major contributor to the triple planetary crisis, but it's also a major contributor to the livelihoods of a number of people, especially in the developing world. And so whatever we do, we must keep them in mind as we go forward. Every year, textiles are responsible for between 2 and 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions. They consume 215 trillion liters of water, equal, I'm told, to 86 million Olympic-sized swimming pools, and generates 9% of microplastics entering the oceans. So these numbers alone tell us that transformation is not just optional, it is urgent. Like most things that we work on, everything is urgent. But again, we need to think of how do we balance the various issues that come up in this context. This is also a sector of enormous promise and profound human value because it represents 4% of global manufactured exports and offers livelihoods to millions. Women make up approximately 80% of the garment workforce. Vulnerable groups, internally displaced people, ethnic minorities, migrants, all very often depend on these jobs as a first place to go when they are displaced. And 77% of textile workers are employed by SMEs, meaning small businesses, local suppliers, which are the beating heart of the textile production. That is why UNEP identified the textile sector as a prime priority for our work, for the sectors that we are focusing on. Because in its factories, design studios, recycling centers, and retail floors lies both responsibility, but also a great opportunity to do things differently. A just transition towards a circular, low-carbon textile value chain is not simply desirable. It is possible, and it is beginning. At the heart of the transition is something we can all achieve together: collaboration among governments, brands, manufacturers, workers, recyclers, financiers, and consumers. Dialogue that leads to alignment, coherence, and collective action. This is the foundation of UNEP's textile initiative. Excellencies, friends, there is growing policy momentum for this and a political momentum. So we're not operating in a vacuum. Around the world, we are seeing growing momentum to regulate, reform, and redesign the textile value chain. National strategies are emerging. Extended producer responsibility schemes are being legislated. Eco-design principles are being adopted. Countries as diverse as France, Hungary, Indonesia, Kenya, Latvia, Netherlands have already moved or are moving towards extended producer responsibility for textiles. I remember some stories also coming out of Sweden and Finland when we were having the first World Circular Economy Forum, where they already had very good examples of this. At the international level, frameworks like the Global Framework on Chemicals have now formally prioritized textiles, a clear signal that the world understands the need for systemic change. So this is a pivotal moment. Policy instruments are taking shape, market initiatives are accelerating, investor expectations are shifting. So we have right now a unique opportunity to align all these little efforts that you see, strengthen coordination, and build shared approaches across borders from the shared values and thinking that we are seeing here. To support this momentum, UNEP has launched the Global Textile Policy Dialogues, the first ever dedicated policy platform which convenes governments to build coherence and accelerate policy innovation across the value chain. The initiative was called for by governments at UNEA 6, including the Netherlands, France, Ghana, Sweden, Tunisia, and Turkey. In the lead up to UNEA 7, we held consultations chaired by Germany, Kenya, and the Netherlands and Chile, and together we define where urgent action is most needed. The result is a roadmap built on two core pillars: knowledge exchange and policy innovation. On knowledge exchange, partners have prioritized extended producer responsibility, sustainable product design frameworks, behavioral instruments and the role of advertising, and policy support for circular business models. So that's a knowledge exchange. On policy innovation, the focus areas include standards for chemicals of concern and product design, the EPR scheme, work on harmonized systems codes, and digital product information systems. We encourage all of you to consult the roadmap and to bring your expertise, your challenges, and your solutions to the table. We're all starting from scratch. This is all new even for us. So the more we learn from you and learn with each other, the better will these roadmaps be. And it's a living document that will be updated as member states involved in the policy dialogues wish to change it and as the work evolves. So in conclusion, we stand at a turning point in our response to the triple planetary crisis. And this industry is uniquely positioned to lead on solutions. If we succeed, the rewards are substantial. A shift to circular textile business models could generate $700 billion in economic value by 2030. And the global second-hand market is already projecting $367 billion by 2029. This is not a future idea, it's a present reality. But it's in this context that I also want to bring out the fact that as we grow the second-hand market, we will need to reduce the primary market, which means we will be affecting a lot of very poor people in a lot of very poor countries. And so we must think how we already create some kind of benefit sharing from all these circular models that we do, so that we do not in any way impact them negatively, either reskill them or find ways in which we make sure that they are not disadvantaged by this. I want to express sincere thanks to today's organizers and to our wonderful moderator and speakers and all the speakers for their partnership with UNEP. And I warmly invite you to join the Global Textile Policy Dialogues. Together we can make this industry one that honors the workers who sustain it, the resources that enable it, and the planet that depends on its transformation. Let us do this together, but let us learn from it together. Thank you very much.
Hello? There we are. Thank you so much. UN Assistant Secretary General, was brilliant. I think you highlighted many of the complexities and opportunities that the sector can provide and should provide as we're facing all of the elements related to the triple crisis. And I think that we cannot start with or continue with a better way than with a ministerial dialogue. I'm pleased to invite to join me on stage His Excellency Thierry Artsen, Minister of the Environment and Public Transport at the Netherlands. Please, Your Excellency, if you can take the seat over there. Then Excellency Vania Gava, Deputy Minister of the Environment and Energy Security of Italy. Your Excellency, thank you. I understand that the representative of Germany might arrive later, but then I will also invite Mr. Rolf Payet, the Executive Secretary of the Basel, Rotterdam and Stockholm Convention. Thank the three of you for joining. Yeah. So, thank you again for joining, and thank you for your leadership on this topic. And I'm hoping, as Rita just mentioned, that this is one of many dialogues that you will be participating, and your countries and organizations will be providing so much positive evidence of what is happening and what needs to happen. And in that sense, I will start with you, Minister Artsen. What is making the transformation of the textile sector an urgent priority today for the Netherlands, economically, socially, and environmentally? I think that Rita put very properly. And what are your aspirations for the coming years?
Is it working? Yeah,
yes.
Great. Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and great to be here to have this dialogue. I just came from a broader panel about the use of material in general, and I think what I said there is that we should start a more strategic view on how to use materials, and start with a basic question: why should we make new products out of fossil materials while we have waste here, used products here, which we can easily reuse or easily recycle? You should ask that question from a ecological point of view. If you look at the textile sector, it has high impact. It's globally interconnected in the industry. There's an enormous pressure on the environment. You can ask it also from an economic point of view. If you want to have easy access to materials, it's much more better that you have control about this value chain. That you have the materials you use directly nearby. If you have controlled it as nearby as possible, especially in a world which has very big dilemmas, which is concerning geopolitically. So, and I think for that, it's really important that economy and ecology go hand in hand in this case, and that we start to develop a strategic view on how to use materials such as textile. And I mean, it's also a very easy question. A few decades ago, many years ago, we just made textile and our own clothes, the needs of people, from already natural products. We started with wool, or we started with cotton or denim, and once upon a time we started to make our clothes from fossil products, from polyester. So I think it's really important that we start rethinking that from both point of view, and then of course it's very important that we start the new dialogue on the plastic treaty, the negotiations there, because we need to make agreements about what is the design of the products we make. How can you eco-design it in such a way? It's much more easier, it's much more cheaper to reuse them or recycle them. Such as agreements we should make on a global scale, and that's one of the reasons why I'm advocating here on this stage and many other stages next coming days, that we should restart the negotiations for a global plastic treaty.
Thank you so much, Minister, and yeah. And I assume that many of you know that the Netherlands co-hosted the UNEP 6 event that's called for the Global Textile Policy Dialogues. So I'm also happy that this is a continuity, and that the Netherlands already have a legislation on extended producer responsibility law, right, since 2023. So now I want to move to Italy. Like Deputy Minister, Last year, under Italy's presidency of the G7, the G7 Agenda on Circular Textile and Fashion was developed, and I know that Italy is also planning to introduce an extended responsibility legislation scheme for textile, I believe, next year. So what makes the transformation of the textile sector an urgent priority today, and what are your aspirations for the coming years?
I'm sorry. Good afternoon to all. Let me begin by sincerely thanking for the invitation and the convening in this important dialogue of today, because transforming the textile sector has become an urgent priority. Today's linear model generated significant environment impacts, social pressure, and across also global supply chain, and increasing economic challenges. Circular economy are essential. Recycled materials often remain more expensive than the virgin ones, and most products are still not designed for durability or recyclability, and contributing to the pollution and waste through their life cycle. And so accelerating circularity is therefore crucial to reducing impacts and building a more resilient system. This is why Italy has made circularity in textile a national priority. And we are preparing us to introduce a comprehensive extended producer responsibility scheme based on the polluter pays principle. It will finance the end-of-life management, repair, reuse, innovative recycling, and eco-design, supported by the progressive collection target and digital reporting and skill development. Looking ahead, eco-design will remain a cornerstone of our efforts, since design determines durability, repairability, recyclability, and reuse potential with Italy's eco-design working group. We want to continue to advance transparency, innovation, competitiveness, and fight against fast fashions, with the digital product passport as a key enabling tool. Green public procurement will also continue to play a strategic role. Through Italy mandatory environment minimum criteria, we aim to steer markets even more effectively toward durable and reusable textile and high-quality recycling material. So we remain firmly committed to ensuring the textile sector because increasing the circular and environmental respectful.
Thank you so much. It's fine. I have mine. Thank you so much, Deputy Minister. And now I would like to move to Rolf in relation to not only your role as Executive Secretary of the BRS, the conventions, but also like more particular into the specific topic that we're talking about. There has been many sustainability efforts today that have been on a voluntary basis. And we know that voluntary is important, but it gets to a point where it's not enough. What can global agreements like the BRS conventions add to this need of moving towards circularity in the textile industry?
Thank you very much. Before I get to that, maybe just a follow-up from what Lee just said in the life cycle of, we won't go into polyester, but let's look at cotton, for example. Mentioned is water, but also important land use change. Land that can be grow food for the people is now being used to supply us the textiles, and I'll come to that in a minute. Pesticides, and the Stockholm Convention has been instrumental in phasing out some of these dangerous pesticides used in intensification of cotton production. And then we move on to processing, and this is where the challenge, it becomes challenging because we start blending it with polyester and other synthetic materials, and we also start adding additives to it. Now, we live in a convenient society now. We want easy iron shirts, we want waterproof suits, whatever else we want. And those, the industry then responds by adding chemicals to those textiles. So we start now adding complexity to the whole, which is a basic product. We can stay basic and still be useful basic, but we add complexity to it because we want to be sophisticated. And then when it comes to export, because as you know, cotton is grown in the global south, and we have, of course, mentioned greenhouse gas emissions, but the challenge there is there's a lot of documentaries showing clothes going back to where they manufactured with still their label on, which means that people bought it, didn't use it, and then try to send it back to where it came from. So serious inefficiencies in the economy of textiles, and we need to address it. We need to face it, and we need to address it. And I agree with you, voluntary efforts can give us good learning, good knowledge, but it's not sufficient for us to really deal with the whole life cycle of textiles. And of course, we have so much overproduction and overconsumption that we now have landfills, let's call them landfills or dumps, that can be seen from space. This is evidence of the problems that we have. So coming back to the need for legal or for standards, I think first industry will tell me it creates a level playing field. Secondly, I think we need to eliminate from the life cycle chemicals that can pose health issues, because believe it or not, when we wear clothes with those chemicals in it, it is being absorbed by our skin. Our children are exposed to those. Our elderly are exposed to those. So we need to get rid of those things. Now, the question I want to leave with you this afternoon before I finish is ask this cotton plant or this silkworm whether the effort they put in to produce the cotton and to produce the silkworm, and we humans who are 10 times or probably 100 times more intelligent, we cannot recycle the clothes that we've actually knitted or made ourselves. I mean, come on. We should be in a position today with the level of civilization we have and technological advancement that we have, design those clothes and be able to recover them in a circular manner. There is no excuse. And I'm sure if we question those cotton plant and the silkworm, they'll be laughing at us and say, your level of intelligence, you cannot turn this, which is a machine made, into, recover it, recover the threads, and reuse it again. I will stop here.
Thank you so much, Rolf. I think that you brought brilliantly many of the trade-off that Lydia mentioned in her first remarks. Yes, so I would like also to invite Her Excellency Rita Schwarz-Sutter, Parliamentary State Secretary of the Federal Ministry for the Environment, Climate Action, Nature Conservation, and Nuclear Safety of Germany. Welcome, Rita. Thank you for joining. You were right on time, as you could not imagine how right you were. Because the next question was for you. You can breathe. You can take a drop of water. Are you okay? Okay, perfect. So what we've been discussing, so Lydia gave us a great introduction on all of the trade-offs and the complexities of the topic that we're talking about, and our panelists, the Minister from the Deputy Minister from Italy, and the Executive Secretary of the Basel Stockholm Convention, gave their opinion on what they see as the main complexities of the textile transformation. So we know that Germany introduced its own government-run certification label for sustainability textile in 2019. You were quite pioneers. The green button evaluates companies' compliance with human rights and environmental due diligence obligations, and is complemented by other initiatives such as the multi-stakeholder initiative, the Partnership for Sustainable Textiles. So what makes the transformation of the textile sector an urgent priority today, economically, socially, and environmentally? And what are your aspirations for the coming years?
That's a very important and large, big question, ladies and gentlemen. take, make, and dispose. This is the linear nature our economy often takes, and this is especially true in the textile sector. Every year, billions of garments are produced and often disposed of hardly worn. Fast fashion has been replaced by ultra-fast fashion. A t-shirt often costs less than a cup of coffee. And I have a lot of young children, they come to the parliament, German parliament, and I was very surprised when they told me I bought a t-shirt around about €1, and then they don't wash it, but they dispose it. And that's not sustainable. And the impacts of this fast fashion are are increasing, and the impacts are very serious. Vast amounts of waste, high water consumption, rising CO2 emissions, and a heavily polluted environment. But disposable fashion is far more than just an environmental problem. There are many aspects at play here. I would like to mention 3. First, clothing that is hardly worn and then disposed of is a massive waste of raw materials. And conversely, a circular textile industry strengthens our economy. It reduces our dependence on raw materials and creates new business models such as a repair, reuse, upcycling, and product as a service. Second, ultra-fast fashion is often manufactured under precarious working conditions with poor wages and insufficient worker protection. And we are all alarmed when there's something like a burning site, but every day nobody thinks about these working conditions. Third, it is not just about something to wear, but also about style and identity. Our clothing says something about us, our needs, and changes are needed, but they can only be achieved together with consumers. So what are we doing? As a part of the EU, Germany primarily relies on 2 instruments to stop the ultra-fast fashion trend. With the eco-design regulation, the EU has created a powerful tool for setting requirements for the sustainable design of products throughout their entire life cycle. Not only the design for one season, but for the whole life cycle. In future, certain minimum requirements will apply to clothing, durability, repairability, share of recycled materials, and recyclability. In addition, a digital product passport will make clear the environmental impacts and material needs. At the same time, under the revised EU Waste Framework Directive, we will introduce a mandatory extended producer responsibility system for textiles. This means that the textile producers will in future bear financial and organizational responsibility for the collection, sorting, and recycling of their products and their end of life. These are important steps, but European measures alone are not enough in the globally organized textile sector. That is why the Environmental Ministry and the Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development are working together with partners worldwide. Our goal is to make textile supply chains more environmentally sustainable and socially fair. To this end, we are collaborating with textile producing countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh, and with countries like Ghana, which import many waste textiles from Europe. The green button you mentioned, our government-run certification label for socially and environmentally sustainable clothing is making an important contribution. Through this label, we are promoting fair production conditions, supply chain transparency, and environmentally friendly materials. In future, circularity will play an even greater role in requirements. And in addition, the German government, industry, civil society, and standard-setting organizations and trade unions are working together in the Partnership for Sustainable Textiles. It is also important to us to support the global textile policy dialogues launched by UNEP. Recently at UNEA 6, we jointly agreed on a global policy dialogue on the textile value chain. This is an important process and we are counting on your support. The German government is actively funding these dialogues. In doing so, we are making a clear commitment to global cooperation and recognizing that it's not just something that is nice to have, but is a key lever for real exchange. Ladies and gentlemen, the future is circular. This is true for the textile industry and for the economy as a whole. We already have good instruments that we want to further develop and advance together. Germany stands ready to this because we believe that sustainability does not stop at borders. Let us shape this transformation together for the environment and for fair working conditions in a resilient, future-proof textile sector. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Secretary. I think that you all mentioned most of the most complex topics of the agenda, and we're just running out of time to finish the panel. So I would like to go through each of you to go like very sharply to a closing remark on what should the global textile policy dialogues provide to you to reach the priorities you shared with us previously. So Minister, if you can start.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's crucial to have global collaboration and making agreements on the complete value chain of textiles. Like I said, we should make agreements about the design of textiles. Myself, together with a group of countries within the European Union, proposed a statement to have mandatory content targets for recycled. Is it working?
Not that good.
It's much better. No, we proposed to have on a European level a agreement for products like textile to have mandatory content targets for recycled content in products who are imported in the European Union. You can do the same not only with recycled content, but also with bio-based content, for example, bioplastics or polyester. We have a great company in the Netherlands I visited together with the Euro Commissioner in Maastricht in the Netherlands, who creates polyester out of wheat. It's a great, so you can have the complete same production facility, but then with a bio-based product there. So it's important, I think, that we have on a global level also agreements about how to use plastic materials, fossil materials, and how you can change that value chain of textile into a circular value chain. On a national level, we also try to collaborate with the companies and entrepreneurs itself as a goal to closing the loop. I think it should be much more easier for consumers to deliver and also re-enter and return their clothes, the textile products, so that you can enter it into a system where you know it's being reused or being recycled. And of course you should go for logical points where consumers are already there. So that's one of the goals in the Netherlands, is that we are collaborating with the complete value chain to closing the loop in order to achieve this circular economy.
Thank you so much, Minister. So, Deputy Minister, in your case, and try to please give us an answer in 2 minutes, if so, what do you think these dialogues can provide to your strategy?
But first of all, I want to remark that international cooperation is fundamental. As you remember, before, Italy, under the G7 presidency, launched the G7 agenda on circular textile, a voluntary yet but concrete roadmap addressing the key challenges areas such as durability and transparency and innovation materials. So the global cooperation also supports capacity building and inclusive growth. Italy's 2024 project in Kenya supports more than 2,000 artisans, women, youth, and small producers by combining circular design, traditional craft map, and using the local and recycled materials. So global cooperation is the key to achieving the benefits of sustainability and circularity, lower impacts, fairer supply chain, stronger business. And the global textile policy dialogues also should continue to serve as an open and collaborative platform to exchange experience, ideas, best practice, and a common space to align the priorities and identifying also the convergence is therefore essential.
Thank you so much, Deputy Minister. I will move now to the State Secretary and then go to you, Rolf. So if you can also let us know what can you take from the dialogues and what you expect from the dialogues for your strategy.
I expect from the dialogue that it is crucial and it's clear that who earns the benefits. I think the benefits should come to them who have fair conditions, working conditions, who have clear, sustainable supply chains, and they should be the best. And this is not a question of if we want to have or not to have. It's for the future of our children and grandchildren, because we need, we have one planet, and if we use these raw materials and so inefficiently, and we don't reuse, and we have bad working conditions, that's not the future. We need a future, a sustainable future, and the sustainability is not only when we talk about, we need clear regulations. And we should say that the benefits lies by the manufacturer who have quality, who have sustainable supply chains and fair working conditions. And that's what I wish and what should be the future.
Brilliant, thank you so much. And as the next panel is a technical panel, Rolf, I would like you to let us know how does Basel's new work on used textile and textile waste move to the global dialogue from talk to action, and what potential outcomes, like very practical, you can share?
Thank you very much. At the last COP, of course, we had a mandate to start working on the textile waste stream because it's increasingly becoming a global issue. One of the things that we'll be looking at is one of definitions, because one of the challenges you have in transboundary movement is what is used textile, what is one's going to be for recycling, or, and other uses. So clarity on so that customs and other, people involved in that chain will be able to identify and ensure that the leaks that we have now where used textiles are dumped, creating the environmental problems, are resolved. So, but that's going to be a challenge, but we will be working with this together with our parties, which of course, as you know, is quite a significant group of both producers and also consumers. Then tackling the upstream, downstream link. As you know, if you check the label on your clothes, it says it's cotton, polyester, but it doesn't say what chemicals are in there. And I think transparency in what we are wearing, in what we are using in our homes and everywhere is important, and is one of the areas of work as well we're looking at, with the aim of, as I said before, eliminating those potential toxic chemicals that are added to clothing right now, which is creating the kind of problems. And secondly, and finally, is to look at how we can mobilize financing to really support initiatives in that. And now we have a project, for example, in the Caribbean, looking at carnivals, because carnivals generate a lot of textiles waste. You can't imagine how much of the textiles with every year, the carnival industry, the sports sector, because that's also sport, you have sports garments now, so different sectors, and which of course increases the complexity. I was this year at the Fashion Week, a very interesting community. The first time I meet with the design and, but they were really fascinated when I started to expand because they are at the design level, they are at the creative level. But once we marry this with the sustainability issue, I think it will make a huge difference in how we change practices in both, preserving the creativity of wearing wonderful, beautiful clothes, but at the same time ensuring that it's sustainable. Thank you.
You get so excited that you lose the microphone.
Yeah, sorry.
So brilliant. Yeah, when functionality must match health and sustainability and the environment, right? So thanks to the four of you, the next of the big dialogues will happen in June in Santiago in Chile, organized by UNEP and the government of Chile. So I will pass the four of you this document and hoping that I'll see you in my home country to discuss about EPR, chemicals and pollution, trade flows, finance, innovation, implementation, and to bring more and more different stakeholders to this discussion in order to advance positively. Thank you so much. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists. So I think that we have heard brilliant, thank you Lidia, thanks so much. I think that we have heard brilliant words and topics that should promote the right type of dialogue. We spoke about the importance of transparency, how fast fashion is moving to ultra fast fashion, how we've seen now clothes becoming a disposable topic, how technology and traceability and durability must match with the urgency of solving the triple crisis, how the global framework on chemicals is also giving us a great context to what was referred many times, the collaboration amongst the different stakeholders, but also the importance of countries like the ones that were present in the panel to collaborate with producing countries. But one of the stakeholders that we also need to invite to be very present in this discussion is the youth. So before we go to our technical panel, I would like to invite Mrs. Ainsley Yenga from Weaver in Resistance, Threading Change from Kenya. Ainsley, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Gonzalo. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ainsley Yenga, and I serve as the Global Innovation Story Map Coordinator at Threading Change. We're basically a youth-led, the world's largest youth-led NGO that works to address systematic changes in the textile industry either through innovation, education, and even policy-driven solutions. Today, I come before you to basically discuss about the issue of just transition in the textile industry. Most of the times, whenever we think about just transition in the textile industry, many people focus on aspects such as technology, laws, and even the production of new materials, or better, just using more sustainable materials. But at its core, and something that I think should be focused on more, is the aspect of the people in the industry. Just transition is about the people, it's about the workers who are involved in the production of these garments. It's about the tailors who are involved in the stitching and even mending of our garments. It's about the communities that actually bear the environmental burden of the impact of our industries. It's about the youth, it's about the SMEs that are actually working to promote sustainable means in the industry. And I think we really need to address and involve them. And this because every person in the textile value chain, from the manufacturers to the consumers, even to the informal recyclers and waste pickers that aren't really considered whenever we make these discussions, play a vital role. They have expertise and carry lived realities that can actually influence the decisions we make, since they're the ones on the ground, they're the ones who actually really know what we need to do. And that's why I came here to just talk about it and bring in also the human rights and people aspects. There's also the issue of the youth. And I'm not just talking about the youth simply because I'm a part of the youth and people say we're the future, but it's because we also are actively participating in the industry. We either through people who are talking about climate justice, as you've seen the Youth Environmental Assembly that was happening from last week. We have content creators who are coming up and just talking about sustainability. We have even designers and entrepreneurs who are even trying to come up with more innovations and solutions to just address this situation. And therefore, also the youth play a vital role in it. But to do that, and just not for the youth, but the public at large, we actually need access. And by access, I mean access to information, access to more affordable, sustainable products, and even access to platforms like this where we can contribute to meaningful policies and just outcomes in general, because this is not something that comes by every day. I know even me being here is like a really rare opportunity, so I'm glad it's actually happening. So we actually need to give people more opportunities to discuss on this and just give their views. And when I come to access to information, my role in Threading Change as the GSM coordinator, I've been able to interact with a lot of brands, organizations that are just working in the industry. And a lot of them, their major issue is that there's no awareness. Like, they're like, we have clothes, we have bags, but not many people actually know they exist. Or if I talk to someone and they're like, oh, you deal with sustainability in the fashion industry, they're like, why? Is that really important? We have so many other pressing issues. Can that really be the focus of our discussion? But they don't get that. The fact is, the textile industry touches all of us in various ways. It could be through the clothes I'm wearing, the shoes we buy, the sacks we even use to store stuff, the bags we buy. It touches on every aspect of our lives. And it's actually one of the world's leading pollution industries that really need to be addressed. And that's why I think we need to have more education, clearer communication as well on why it's important, and government and institutional support, because that's an issue that's really affecting the producers and the designers because they lack the support to actually further advance the sustainability mechanisms. And apart from information, there's also the issue of affordability. As I said before, we need access to affordable, sustainable products, because you'd find maybe someone is willing to actually participate in sustainable means, but they can't really afford the items. And that's not even an issue for the consumers alone. We even have the producers, the designers, those in the SME business also who are impacted by cost, because eco-friendly materials could either not be easily accessible where they are, so they're high cost to even get it, or just high cost to even manufacture it. There's limited circular infrastructure. It's rare to find like an industry in a large-scale industry that's actually focusing on sustainable textile industry. We also, and there's, as I said before, limited institutional support. We need governments to actually go out there and say, oh, we have this brand, and this is what they're working on, to create more awareness, and also to even provide funding to them, because most of the times why it's more costly is because the money is coming from their pockets. They're the ones who are actually outsourcing it. Others are even taking loans just to actually get the business running, which leads to the high cost. It's all circular. It's all in motion. Like if this doesn't happen, this won't happen. So everything is interconnected, and I'm hoping you can see that. And just to put it in perspective, I know I've highlighted there are a bit of challenges here and there, but there's also been positive developments. As I said before, there's been an increase in content creators. We even had the Youth Environmental Assembly that had, from what I heard, they had close to 1,000 youth representatives from around the world just speaking up on climate justice. That's a big thing. And when I interact with people around me, that's a really big thing and a step in the right direction. We even have cities like Markham, Canada, who are actually focusing on recycling and reusable programs just to promote the recycling industry, and just showing how the governments can actually support in the fight for circularity and sustainability in the industry. Even here in Kenya, there's been an increase in schools that are actually teaching about sustainability. I could give an example of Delight Fashion School. They're actually teaching the next generation of designers and entrepreneurs on how can you actually make garments that are sustainable, what materials can you use. We even have organizations like my own that are working to address systematic changes in the industry. We have like a lot of things going on, and And just to come even closer to home, here in UNEA, Threading Change has actually been doing a community quilt. Some of you, I believe, might have passed by or even seen it, and we've just been gathering people's views on why sustainability in the industry is important. We've been collaborating with Sisters in Climate, Delight Fashion School, and Rose and J Handmade just to make this possible and just to stitch people's answers together. And interestingly enough, nobody said sustainability is impossible. Like, sure, maybe some expressed concerns, maybe how do we make it work in my country? Because we have also other pressing issues. How do you actually bring it to the drawing board? We had others who are like, affordability is an issue, or raising accountability needs to be, we need better accountability measures. Because whenever we do this, the issues of landfills, whenever the clothes come to our countries, yes, there's good they are doing, because there are people I've seen from my lived experience, people actually benefiting from the second-hand clothes that come, but not all the clothes that come are actually good. Like, majority of them end up not being wearable, and not everyone has the skills to stitch their own garments, to fix it up, which ends up leading to the garment situation that we have today. And I think we really need to address these issues. And I could really honestly go on and on, but my time is ending. And I just want to affirm, like, to make the textile industry actually work and to move to other sustainable measures, we need to come together as one. We need to find a way to balance the needs of the people as well as the needs of the industry. Because if we focus too much on one side, the other side will either retaliate or it just won't work. Like, that's part of being human. It's almost like negotiating, like, how are we gonna make this work? And like, that's all I just wanted to say, and just thank you all for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ansley. Great insights. And with that, I would like to now invite the technical panel members to join me on stage. First, Mr. James Boyd Moss, the founder of Mananasi. Also join me Mr. Nikhil Hirdaramani, director of Hirdaramani Group. Mr. Erasmus Muthura, head of SME at the Absa Bank Kenya. The Absa Bank is part of the UNEP Finance Initiative, so thank you for that as well. And finally, Mrs. Mariela Noto, the Academia and Multilateral Partnership Director at the CDHC Foundation. So thanks for joining, the four of you. And I would like to start with Nikhil. So having heard the Minister's priorities, where do you see strong alignment with what you are experiencing on the ground as a manufacturer? And what benefits would the shift to circularity and sustainability enable? Where might there be opportunities to push further?
Thank you. Great to be here. Firstly, thank you for inviting a manufacturer. I think sometimes our voices are not heard in these forums, so I think it's good to be here. And at the end of the day, the brunt of many of these policies comes to us. So it's good that we're here and able to express ourselves. I think that you have to understand that in the last couple of years, there have been a lot of earthquakes for manufacturers, whether it's geopolitical, COVID. More recently, so my business, I'm a director of the Hidramani Group, which is a sustainable manufacturer. We have factories, we're headquartered out of Sri Lanka, we have factories in Bangladesh, Ethiopia, Vietnam, and Nicaragua. But Sri Lanka in the last couple of weeks, you would know, has been affected by serious flooding. So we're already seeing environmental impact. So we've had a lot of sort of triggers, a lot of earthquakes when it comes to being able to sort of move forward when it comes to business. But when you look at sort of circularity and sustainability, we have been pushing environmental sustainability or overall sustainability with our Future First strategy, which was sort of developed over 5-6 years ago. And we have a clear roadmap. We've been pushing sustainability for 15 years. So I think the desire to push sustainability is very much there, and circularity. But we need to make it easier. So having listened to the ministers, what we're seeing now is that we're seeing so many different types of compliances. We're being pulled in many, many different directions. So we need to make it easier. There needs to be harmonization. And it's not just country-wise, it's region-wise, because we're just being, as I say, we're pushed all over the place when it comes to compliance. When I look at sort of what's on the ground in terms of you know, where can we sort of look at innovation? So we work, you know, we live in a fast fashion model. Our factories are geared to fast fashion at the moment, right? I acknowledge what the Assistant Secretary General said earlier, that we must take into account people, because we're looking at circularity models here, but the impact that will have on people and factories, and what does it mean? Do we need to retrain them? So I want to highlight that point. But I think when it comes to innovation, I think the desire to push sustainability initiatives, circularity initiatives, is very much there in the supply chain. But when it comes to how do we finance that? How do we push that? How do we get involved? I mentioned the fact that manufacturers sometimes are not involved. We look at some of the innovations that have happened in recent years. Manufacturers have not been there, and I think that's one of the reasons why they have failed. You know, innovation happening in Europe needs to happen in the factories. It needs to happen where the factories are, and we want to be involved. How can we be involved? How can we, you know, the funding model? We look at we need to look at a much more longer term finance model for circularity. It can't be very short term. Investment has to go in, and then, you know, I suppose the consumer finally, you know, is the consumer going to pay more to pay? At the moment, it's more expensive to produce circular clothing. Is the consumer going to pay more? Probably not. So that goes back to my point about innovation. How do we really help innovation in the supply chain to push that?
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Nicola. And also thank you for highlighting the importance of bringing the industry into these dialogues. The expectation of the dialogues is not only to be amongst policymakers, it's also about industry, stakeholders like consumers, as you were saying, but also the academia, right? We need to have all stakeholders connected. So, Mariela, what are you seeing the industry doing to advance sustainability and circular textiles, and what type of policy or regulatory support do you believe would enable this to be scaled or accelerated? Are there gaps that are important to be addressed, but the incentives are still too low?
Yeah, well, first of all, again, also for me, thank you for inviting me. I almost have to echo part of what Nikhil said. He stole a bit of my thunder. But I think that's because there's a lot of things happening within the industry that are part of this big dialogue. There are a lot of activities happening around circularity, as you said as well. There is a wish for the industry, especially the targeted current, I would say, industry of well-known brands, well-known suppliers that are willing to take the next steps when it comes to circularity and sustainability. But indeed, one of the bottlenecks is long-term commitments, long-term finance. We see very often short-term solutions, innovations that can be implemented but cannot be scaled. And that is something that we are running into a lot. When it comes to local and regional implementation, indeed, as the Minister of the Netherlands also said, the Textile Valley in the Netherlands, the Dutch Textile Valley, is creating a lot of good innovations, but these innovations are not always scalable abroad. So how do you actually connect with each other in that sense and talk to each other and sit at a table to be able to scale it globally? Still, virgin materials are cheaper than other materials that we make circular. So, you know, as long as those additional costs, environmental and societal costs, are not internalized, we will probably have an imbalanced situation. So there is a trade-off. I think secondly, and we talked already about our overconsumption, that is a big gap. And in certain discussions that we have, it's also still the elephant in the room. Because who is there to actually blame for the overconsumption? Is it the consumer who still wants more? Is it brands that are putting more production into facilities and pushing it to us via marketing? How do we stop it? We're basically stuck in an economic situation and in business models where we are not able to find our way out. And I think that's definitely where policy will come into place. And just from our side, I think as ZDHC as well, one of the things that we are trying to consider is that and where there is a big gap, is that we're targeting and we're discussing a lot with bigger suppliers, well-known suppliers who are already active, bigger brands who are active in the field of circularity. But we're forgetting that we're just targeting a fraction of the textile industry with that. There's a huge scale of local production, local activities and production that we're not even discussing and that we're keeping aside, and that I think we can discuss with local governance at the policy level. And with that, in short, what do I think could accelerate from the policy level? Creating those financial incentives, potentially also penalties that reflect those externalities. Supporting mandatory supply chain transparency, because I totally agree with what was said in the previous panel. There is no time anymore for voluntary commitments. That should be done and over with. And encouraging long-term offtake agreements, potentially through public-private mechanisms, for example, or blended finance. And really embedding sustainable chemical management as a precondition as well for circularity. Because if we don't put the right chemistry in, it will still come out. So even if we keep it circular, those chemicals will stay into the products. And that's, of course, what we will try to avoid.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Mariela. It's clear. We have these trade-offs, and then the regulations can help us solve those trade-offs. Being one of them, what you mentioned, that traditional materials are cheaper at this point, but we have someone here that is producing a new innovative fiber for the industry through the use of pineapple agricultural waste. So James, thank you and congratulations for your achievement by reaching that material. What benefits does this provide, and what concrete and practical suggestions for policy support would support you bringing this to the market? But also if you can refer to this trade-off and the complexity of competing with cheaper material, but we know that that cheaper material is bringing health and environmental damage, right?
So thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in the panel. I think probably it would be worth just digging into a little bit of the details of exactly what we do. So we take post-harvest waste from that's produced by pineapple plantations, and we use it to produce a fiber for the textile industry, and then also feed in the form of silage.
Sorry, how local does it have to be? Like when you think about pineapple waste, I can imagine that the transport system can be complex, right? How
Exactly, so it really needs to come from a plantation. So we work with Del Monte, Kenya, who they've got a 4,000 hectare plantation just north of Nairobi. And the conventional way of disposing of that waste is really to let it dry in the field and then to burn it. And that allows them to plant the next rotation of pineapples. And so what we do is we go in after the fruit has been harvested, we pull the waste out of the field, put it through a process which extracts the fiber and leaves a residue from which we make the silage. And really what that's doing is it's intercepting this waste product and preventing it from being burnt. So I guess in terms of benefits, the first benefit is that we're avoiding some emissions in terms of that waste incineration. And then what's obviously highly topical for what we're talking about here is we're producing a sustainable material for the textile industry. So, there's no land that's being dedicated to its production, and depending on how you do your analysis, whether you share it between the pineapple or the fiber, it's got a much lower impact than your sort of conventional cotton or polyester. There's then also benefits with regard to food security. So, we're providing an affordable and reliable feedstock for the beef and dairy industry, and then also we're creating resilience for the agricultural industry in the sense that there's an additional stream of revenue. And then the last benefit, I would say, is to do with local wealth creation. So it's a highly labor-intensive process. So we're creating a lot of jobs and injecting wealth into the local economy. So in terms of benefits, it's a circular practice, and it's really creating a lot of good, not only for the textile industry. And then with regard to policy, I guess we've operated miles below the sort of like policy formulation level, but I think our experience can probably instruct a little bit as to the direction that it goes in. And I guess the first challenge that we had was getting finance to bring the idea to life. And the very first thing that I did was I went to Del Monte, Kenya, and I pitched the idea to them, and with the intention of getting finance. And it was a very fruitful discussion, and they were very interested in it. But I walked out empty-handed, and it was really because it's quite a risky initiative, and then also there is just no policy really that incentivizes them to dispose of their waste responsibly. So I guess that's my first point really being that if there's policy that can be targeted at those agricultural waste producers that incentivizes them to dispose of their waste responsibly, whether it's for the textile industry or animal feed or compost, whether it's the carrot or the stick, just something that makes them engage or at least ask the questions about how they can do it better. Off the back of that, we then actually managed to generate or to get our funding through grant finance from the UK government, and that has obviously got some sort of policy-backed solution behind it. And so, and off the back of it, we built a pilot facility, demonstrated the business model, went back to Del Monte, and then that actually provided the evidence for them to buy the business, and now it's entirely backed financially by Del Monte. So it just shows how policy in one area has really stimulated a circular solution. And then I guess just to touch on the market, it is a very new material, and it's difficult to sell it. It's pineapple fiber's expensive. I'm sure if I were to tell Nikhil what sort of cost per kilogram it is that we sell our pineapple for, it is very challenging, and a lot of that is because it's a new material and there are economies of scale and that sort of thing. But it is also competing, to your point, against cotton and polyester, which are far cheaper. And so, if we can have policies that are directed at the harmonized system, so I know HS codes have been mentioned, but pineapple fiber doesn't have its own specific HS code. So if we export it, it's out there to compete with everybody. But if it were classified in some sort of environmentally friendly material, then it might be able to be subject to some sort of beneficial tariffs or something like that, which would accelerate its uptake. And then, of course, any sorts of policies directed at the market itself, which just incentivizes the adoption of these less well represented fibers.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, James. And that brings us very well to Erastus, because you directly heard from the innovator how important is finance. So what are those 2 or 3 main challenges for textile businesses, particularly SMEs, to access financing or circularity, and how can policy support and block those?
Thank you so much, and Mohoz, and thank you for that question. I'm happy that we are talking about a conversation that covers the SMEs who I represent, and thank you for having me here on this panel. My name is Erastus Mudura. I'm head of SME for Absa Bank Kenya. I look after SMEs cutting across all the sectors. And I think one of the major hindrances for access to finance is actually not finance itself. It's actually the mindset, because most SMEs will go into this business not looking at the big picture, but thinking they are just trying out something. Some of them are not even aware they are within the circular economy, or they are doing anything to do with sustainability. And it's high time that this conversation becomes an SME conversation rather than just a corporate and big brand conversation. Becomes a main agenda, not a Nairobi. So you will find most of these SMEs who are within the innovation space, access to finance becomes very difficult because they don't have maybe bankable business case. They're not able to keep proper records and structures that can be presented to the bank for us to be able to finance. They are not investor ready. So they are fighting with so many other issues about regulation, about getting the structure that works for them. And the capacity issue now sets in. So assuming one of them becomes quite successful, and it's producing a certain component, certain goods, certain cloth, maybe out of the textiles that they are recycling. Again, the capacity gap to be able to fulfill the market needs. Tell them you want a full container, then it becomes a big issue. They go to the financial institution, they don't have the collateral to be able to finance the production to that scale. So you'll find they're battling with so many other issues, and then the collapse of the business, the cash flow issues, the credit readiness then sets in, and many others. But I think most important, it starts from capacity gap and mindset. Capacity to be able to produce, capacity to have the right technology to do it, because as you rightly said, it becomes quite expensive to be into this space, capital intensive, be it maybe you're looking at the machines that are required, the capital that you require to gather the raw materials and still be able to supply, sell, and then you are paid after 30, 60, 90 days and still be expected to sustain. You need to export, but then you can't, maybe you're not export ready. So all these challenges that you'll find the SMEs fighting with within the textile industry, then at the end of the day, then it takes institutions, and you asked about the policy, to come up with policies that enable all the organizations to support the SMEs. And I think one of the things that we should do is to become intentional as big brands, as financial institutions, by becoming intentional about how much do we want to pump into this economy or to this value chain. What are we setting aside as intervention, capacity building, and linking them to ecosystems that are able to uptake and support all the value chain actors within the whole of the textile industry. And also becoming the voice of the SMEs, because in most cases, these discussions are held at a very high level. So the SME doesn't even understand what's happening, and it becomes more of a compliance issue than a commitment issue, because they can't see maybe the big picture. So we need to break down the conversation to the level of an SME to understand, see the big picture just beyond the quick profits, but also handhold them and make it a policy for every large organization to set aside interventions, collaborate with others so that the SMEs can find in space within which they can thrive.
And then, Erastus, just to continue with you, what are the benefits of investing in SMEs for sustainability, and how important is the role of collaboration between finance, industry, policymakers, international organizations, and what would you like to see regarding the dialogues, right? We're talking about the importance of setting these policy dialogues. What does it mean for you?
Thank you. I think, back to your point, first, the importance of having the SMEs within this space is because they present a very big opportunity for the economy. For example, if you look at Kenya, within East Africa and this region, in most other countries, the contribution of MSMEs to the economy is in the range of 35 to 75% to the GDP. So when you empower SMEs, then you're empowering innovation. A lot of innovation takes place within the SME space. Leading employer is the SMEs. Over 90%, like in Kenya, of the businesses, new businesses, are within the SME space. So the SMEs are agile, they are creative, and they also become a very good platform for the youth, a very good platform for women. You find a lot of them starting within the SME space. And so whenever you empower SMEs, then you trigger the economy, you create jobs, you promote innovation, and this becomes then a space within which then you're able to start the economy. And I think some of the things that we should be able to see within the collaboration space is whereby the big institutions come up with also policies even of consumption and uptake of products that are produced by SMEs within the circular economy, setting aside like green procurement policies that are able to accommodate the output and also giving them the leeway to purchase from them. If you find a small SME trying to get pre-qualified as a service provider, provider of goods and services in a big institution, then the compliance checks, the capacity, the evidence that they need to prove that they can be able to serve a big institution then becomes very hard. But if we have a policy that becomes intentional, we have incentives coming from the government, all the way from the taxes, on the raw materials, on the finished goods, on the regulation, and also trying to simplify the conversation to a point that an SME can be able to consume it. And so this takes for collaboration. The policymakers, the development partners can help us with as a finance sector with guarantee schemes so that we can de-risk these SMEs who are not able to afford collateral to be able to finance their operations, their working capital, expansion, production lines, and anything they need to have so that they can have capacity enough to produce. And finally, if you look at also the government, we have a lot of data, both from the government, from the banking sector, from other sources, that can help us even have traceability. Go to most of the financial institutions and try to find out how much have you done with the circular economy, going to the government agencies, development partners, we don't have the real figures because even some of these SMEs, as I said, they are not sure they are within that space. So the way we do traceability, tagging on information, using data and scoring models that are able to be friendly to this circular economy that doesn't have revenue-tested and time-tested model that can convince a bank for financing, then that comes from different sources so that we can be able to accommodate them within their space.
Thank you so much. With that, I would like to go back to you, Nikhil, and James, the two of you. If you can react also from the perspective of these dialogues and how that is hoping to create a new environment for collaboration. So how could greater collaboration enable a sustainable and circular textile sector? So you go Nikhil first and then James.
So, I've been listening to the discussions here, and I mentioned about finance, and when you look at actually the challenges we've seen in recent years, is that at a mass scale, there has been a lot of funding that's gone into circularity, into initiatives, but they failed. So we have to understand that, and I think it has a lot to do with the collaboration, because ultimately I can help James, but I need a customer. I'm a manufacturer. I have to have a brand that's going to commit to buy his fabric from me, right? And I think when I look at what's happened in the environment at a larger scale, that's what's failed. I mean, the brands have not committed to buying sustainable. I mean, brands have invested in a number of these initiatives, but have actually not bought from them, and haven't committed and supported them, right? And that's what we're trying to sort of figure out. So yes, funding from an SME level is needed, and of course, but let's look at the bigger picture, what's happening already. And I think we need to figure out so the collaboration that he and I can have is realistically working with a brand. And, we work with a few brands that are very interested in innovation, but there are very few of them. We need more. We need more commitment. We need maybe some government regulation about innovation on circularities to commit brands to commit to working with because it's not going to happen otherwise. We've been talking about this for many, many years. So I think that's where there is an element of collaboration that can happen. I can find a brand, I can work closely. We need to look at the finance because of what we talked about. You said it's going to be more expensive. We're all running businesses. We need to make money at the end of the day. We need to run a business. So we need to look at the commercial viability, but we need the models to be able to help us to do that.
Brilliant, thanks so much. James, what's your perspective?
Yeah, I think to follow up on Nikhil there, it's a bit of a chicken and egg problem as well because, particularly for the textile industry, you need scale. And, a lot of these spinners are, they're pushing through, 90 tons of cotton a day sort of thing. And so you can't even have a conversation with them unless you're of, that sort of scale. And so for an SME, it's quite difficult to get to that point. So, there is some sort of dialogue that has to happen, as to how we kickstart that process. And I think, like Nikhil's saying, if you can have collaboration between the brand, the manufacturer, and then the supplier of the raw material, then you can have an agreement to begin with, and some sort of solution. And then I guess just broadly in terms of collaboration, Mananasi, or our business, really forms a kind of like circular node in a network between the agricultural industry, livestock, and the textile industry. And those are three industries which are quite insulated from one another. And creating those networks and joining the dots, which I think is super necessary for circularity, where a waste that's produced in one industry is potentially a resource for another, can only come down to collaboration. So I think that sort of inter-industry collaboration is essential for circularity.
Thank you so much. And Mariela, how do we better bridge the gap between industry and policymakers in terms of what is both ambitious to address the contribution this sector makes to the 3 planetary environmental crises and also realistic for implementation throughout the value chain at scale? And how can multi-stakeholder initiatives like ZDHC can help, and also how that is connected to the dialogues and its outcomes?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think first I want to shortly tap into what James was saying, because I think you were talking as well about, hundreds of tons of cotton, right? And the scale. And that's exactly where the problem is. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of tons of cotton and this amount of scale of production. So taking a step back into, okay, circularity, investment, blah, 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 we cannot live up to that level of production. No, because that's not the level that we want to have. We should not want to have those X amounts of tons of cotton being produced every single year, let's say. So I think that's already the core, and that's basically where you have to tap into. I think for us, when it comes to the dialogue with policy, as well as where do we see the gaps, I think sitting here is one of the things that is already a win in terms of an MSP. We have 380 members, all from private sector and industry, working together towards eliminating hazardous chemicals out of the textiles. Do we have governments regularly in our meetings and on the table? No. So we have to also look at ourselves. I mean, we are not doing it either. We're not inviting policymakers as much as we should. And at the same time, policymakers are not inviting us as much as it should. So it's a two-way street. We're not really getting ourselves around the same table. And I think the policy dialogues will be very, very important in that, to open up that current situation where we are not talking to each other and looking at realistic results. There is still, and I think I'm applauding Germany as very much, because in the Netherlands we started a textile commitment as well among brands, but I see that it's much stronger in Germany because of the engagement between the ministries and the brands. And I think that's also where that's also the level where you would need to be. That type of engagement, talking with the textile partners, and what are realistic solutions, what are needs coming out of the industry from both brands as well as suppliers, is key to a solution. But it is complex. When we talk about, I would say, our role, I would also like to go back to something that that Italy was saying just now, as well as some of the other parties around education and sustainable by design. What that also asks from us is actually education, because we can, of course, put in these rules and regulations about sustainable by design, but if our educational network is not yet fit for that purpose, we are still bringing designers into the market that are not taking a lot of these things into account. So we also see, for instance, in the Netherlands, that we really have to step up with the educational models to teach designers what sustainability actually means, what chemical management, for example, actually means, that it's not only about new fibers, but that it's also about changing current systems. So that also needs educational investment. Our role, I would say, as a big industry association, almost, I would say, initiative, is to really convene actors together, to be able to also talk about those needs in our own organizational setup, create business cases, pilots, blueprints that can support, again, with the financing, but also in discussions with the governments. We can also support with securing investment. We're doing a lot of projects, public-private partnerships on the ground with brands, suppliers, and the local community, as well as governments, to build those business cases for the future. And we will keep on doing that, also working, for instance, with the African Development, of the French Development Bank, to teach, basically, suppliers as well, to tap into funding and to get trained by that, and to look at the needs for funding. And last but not least, I would say that for us, and we just talked a lot about it a little bit earlier as well, one of the preconditions for circularity and in general for moving the industry forward is taking into account chemistry. The processes happening within the industry, dyeing, finishing, it all contains chemicals. So as long as we are producing in the way that we are producing, we will still be processing products with lower quality, with more chemistry. They will not be able to be recycled. They will only come up back into those waste piles. And we are able to, with the organization that we currently have and the brands and partners in the organization, to at least take one step into the direction of eliminating hazardous chemicals, foremostly input control, so that the feedstock actually can be used for circularity in the future. And I think that's where our role will be.
Thanks so much, Mariela. James, Nikhil, Erastus, Mariela, thanks for all of your insights and the work that you're doing. Please join me with a round of applause for our panel. And for our closing remarks and to send us with some next steps, I will then invite to join us on the podium to Mr. Stephen Stone, Deputy Director, Industry and Economy Division at UNEP. We can leave the panel and leave Stephen.
All right. Thanks very much, Gonzalo. Thanks so much to our panelists. That was super. You know, I was wishing the whole time our policymakers were listening to you because I said, you know, this is the conversation that needs to happen, right? And so, Nikhil, thank you for coming very much. James, because I think in a way, if the economies are going to change in the future, we need the productive sector to be part of the conversation. That's what I'm hearing, and it's so great to see you that you're stepping up. It's not easy to innovate, it's not easy to meet the challenge, and the points you were making about toxicity that Rolf was making as well, about toxicity in our clothes, toxicity in our foods. How do we get this stuff out of our lives? How do we get it under control? Well, what I was hearing today, and thank you, Gonzalo, for moderating this really important session, is the policy guardrails. You know, it's the policy guardrails that you've all pointed to, but it's also talking about the policy guardrails so that the finance will flow. And I think that's something, Erasmus, that you pointed to as well. We're here, we have finance, but there's a mindset, and the mindset needs to adapt to what the reality is. So, colleagues, I think it's been a really good conversation, both the policymakers and let's call it the reality makers, the guys who get it done every day. Obviously, Gonzalo, I think there's a real interest in this dialogue. So what I'm hearing is from youth, from other parts of the real economy, let's come together, let's have this conversation, let's make it a two-way street, because it's not an easy change that we're involved with, it's a big change. I think UNEP is very happy to be part of this conversation, and we've heard from Germany, Italy, Netherlands, they're happy to be part of this conversation. We have 2 milestones coming up in 2026, so after UNEA, we move to Chile for the Textile Summit, very important in June 2026, and perhaps that will be on the web, or Gonzalo, if you have more information. And then there is also the Global Framework on Chemicals conference, first conference in Geneva in 2026, November. I don't know how we get everyone into the room, but we need to try to get everyone in the room. So if you're not there in person, you're there virtually, you're represented, your voice is heard. So let's try to make it happen, and thanks again, everyone, for coming today.